Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is portfolio questions, and the first portfolio is Constitution, External Affairs and Culture and Parliamentary Business. I would remind members that questions 3, 6 and 7 are grouped together, and therefore I shall take any supplementaries on these questions after all 3 have been answered. And at question number 1, I call Liam Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how much money has been distributed by Creative Scotland in the previous 12 months.
Cabinet Secretary Angus Robertson.
Presiding Officer, may I begin by drawing members' attention to today's publication of the International Strategy Report, and I'm sure I speak for all when I thank everyone in the global network that does so much to promote Scottish exports, inward investment, tourism growth and much else besides. In answer to Liam Kerr's question, Creative Scotland has distributed a total of £113,266,072 in award commitments between the 1st of November 2024 and the 6th of November 2025. The figure consists of over £88 million from the Scottish Government and over £25 million in National Lottery Awards, promoting resilience, diversity and innovation to help support the arts to thrive in communities across Scotland. A key development over this period has been the delivery of the multi-year funding programme, which began distributing funds in April to more than double the number of organisations previously in receipt of core funding from Creative Scotland.
Liam Kerr.
Thank you. But interrogating those figures, in the last 5 years, Creative Scotland spent just over £430,000 on culture projects via its Crowdmatch fund. Out of 110 given public money, just 4 were from the North East, which got a total of £20,330. That's less than 5% for Aberdeen, Shire and Moray. Does the Cabinet Secretary believe that Creative Scotland is too focused on the Central Belt, and will he commit to reviewing how Creative Scotland can ensure a more equitable distribution to the North East?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I thank Mr Kerr for raising the issue of regional distribution, and I know that members across the Chamber representing different parts of the country will want to make sure that local arts and cultural organisations and venues are properly funded. Across the North East of Scotland parliamentary region, there are 24 multi-year funded organisations. These include 7 in Aberdeenshire, 8 in Aberdeen City, 8 in Dundee City and 1 in Angus. I'll look closely at the fund that he's drawn my attention to satisfy myself that the applications match the criteria against applications, but through him and to all members I would encourage all cultural and arts organisations, regardless of where they are, to apply for funding. That is the best chance of getting a successful funding decision, and I would encourage as many cultural and arts organisations in the North East of Scotland to do so.
Supplementary, Jamie Hepburn.
The Cabinet Secretary has been engaging with Commonwealth Theatre Trust in respect of ongoing support when their transition funding from Creative Scotland runs out. Can he provide an update and set out his confidence in Commonwealth Theatre's ability to successfully resolve the matter to enable them to continue the good work they've been doing for the last 60 years?
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government understands the important role that Cumbernauld Theatre plays in its community and the wider culture sector. As Mr Hepburn indicates, the Scottish Government continues to engage with the Cumbernauld Theatre Trust and the theatre's other public sector partners, including Creative Scotland and North Lanarkshire Council, to support efforts to secure its future and understand the options that are available to the Trust. And may I take this opportunity to thank Jamie Hepburn publicly for all that he's been doing to support Cumbernauld Theatre.
A supplementary, Stephen Kerr.
There's been a lot of controversy about the issue that Liam Kerr raises, as well as the transparency of the decision-making process behind the awards of funding. Angela Leach's review is due to be published this month. Will it be published?
Cabinet Secretary.
I'm confident that the report will be published as planned, and then in addition to the early part of Mr Kerr's question, we talked about transparency. I have no doubt that members of the committee that covers my areas, so Constitution, External Affairs and Culture, of which he's a member, will make sure that they have the best answers possible from Creative Scotland, but also the review process, so that he and other members can satisfy themselves about the conclusions that are presented. I have not seen them. I look forward to seeing them, and I lay great weight and store on the advice that we will be receiving, and I look forward to seeing it as planned.
Question number 2, Claire Baker.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what action is to take to prevent the permanent loss of church buildings with significant cultural or heritage value in light of the decision by the Church of Scotland to reduce its estate.
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I thank Claire Baker for her question? And although decisions about church closures are, of course, decisions for the churches themselves and not for Scottish ministers, I'm keen to ensure that the cultural value of these sites is appropriately considered during any decision-making and that appropriate planning regulations are applied. Historic Environment Scotland provides advice and guidance for asset owners, for community groups and for developers, and that is available on its website. I've also met with both the Scottish Churches Trust and members of the General Trustees of the Church of Scotland to discuss my concerns, and I will continue to engage with stakeholders to explore approaches to safeguard these important assets for future generations and the communities in which they lie.
Apologies. Claire Baker.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response. Built in 1592, Burntisland Old Parish Church is a Category A listed landmark with deep cultural and community significance, and it's known as the birthplace of the King James Bible. While this is one of hundreds of buildings the Church of Scotland are disposing of, Burntisland Parish Church is of historic and cultural importance, but without intervention it is at risk of being lost. A community group has been established to explore all avenues, and Historic Environment Scotland have visited the site. But would the Cabinet Secretary consider coming to visit Burntisland to see firsthand this undervalued jewel on the Fife Coast and to discuss how we can protect this heritage building for future generations?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, thank you very much to Claire Baker, both for raising the issue of Burntisland Parish Church, but also extending an invitation which I'm happy to accept. I think it's really important that communities, in understanding the options that they have for the future use of churches, are best advised by those whose job it is to do so, and that is, in this first instance, for Historic Environment Scotland. But I am happy to be apprised of the situation, and I've seen some really good examples of potential new church use, and perhaps some of those are options that are currently being explored by the community themselves, and I'd be happy to hear about that.
Supplementary. Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I should declare an interest as a member of the Church of Scotland, but that said, I share the concern about the speed with which the Kirk is disposing of so many properties which have been at the heart of their communities for centuries in some case, and to which many people have a strong emotional connection. I'm certainly aware of community groups across my region who are interested in acquiring these historic church buildings, but need time to put together a business case and to raise the funds, and are concerned at the speed with which the church is putting these properties on the market, and are worried they will not have that opportunity because a delay is not being built into the process. So can I encourage the Cabinet Secretary, if he's engaging with the Church of Scotland, to encourage them not to force this process too quickly, and where there are community interests who want to express a view that they might want to purchase, they are allowed time to put that together so that these assets are not lost to the communities that they serve.
Cabinet Secretary.
I think Murdo Fraser makes a very good point. So firstly, there's the issue, the accelerating rate at which churches are being disposed of across denominations. And incidentally, it's not just the Christian church, there are other faith groups that have been disposing of property because of societal change and so on. I think everybody understands this. So firstly, we have this rate which is increasing, and then we have the specific point that Murdo Fraser raises, which is about the speed of disposal, and that may happen too quickly for communities to have the option to be best advised. So firstly, I'd like to give him the assurance that advice and information is available. And that is available through the website of Historic Environment Scotland. As we heard from Claire Baker, there has been involvement with other community groups. If he has specific issues about specific sites, specific communities, I would be really grateful if he can forward that to me. I'm having an ongoing discussion with the Church of Scotland and with other denominations to best understand what we can do here, because if this is an accelerating process, then this is going to present an even greater challenge and potentially an opportunity too, but we have to make our way through this process as well as we can.
Question number 3, Jackie Dunbar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on its latest engagement with STV regarding the broadcaster's plans to cut jobs and regional news programming.
Cabinet Secretary.
Following my written correspondence with Scottish Television, I met the broadcaster on the 6th of November to emphasise the critical importance of protecting jobs based in Scotland in the media industry and the vital outputs of regional news services. In the coming weeks, I will also be meeting with the regulator Ofcom and with the National Union of Journalists to discuss the implications of these proposals. I recognise the anxiety of the situation which has been caused for many affected staff and communities, particularly in northern Scotland, and reaffirm the Scottish Government's commitment to protect sustainable jobs, to maintain regional representation and to uphold the broadcaster's public service obligations.
Jackie Dunbar.
STV claimed fallen viewer figures and advertising revenue were to blame when slashing 60 jobs in Axon North of Scotland News. Yet now we learn from STV North's own accounts that profits rose almost 24% last year on the back of increased income from advertising. These cuts simply don't make sense and fail communities and viewers in Aberdeen and the North East. So can I ask, does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that local journalism is a vital part of democratic society, and can he provide an update on the latest engagement with STV in light of this new news?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I agree with Jackie Dunbar that local journalism is a vital part of our democratic society, and that's why I will continue to emphasise our strong opposition to proposals that put sustainable Scottish jobs and the outputs of vital news services at risk. I met with Scottish Television last week to press the importance of protecting jobs for media professionals right across Scotland, and I'll also meet with Ofcom and with the National Union of Journalists in the coming weeks to discuss STV's proposals and to set out the Scottish Government's deep concerns, which she raises, I think, important points that I'm hearing from members across the Chamber about advertising income and its projections in the future, and that is a matter for STV to explain to us all.
Question number 6, Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to STV's proposed changes to its news provision, including the potential impact on local and regional journalism in the North East of Scotland.
Cabinet Secretary.
May I commend Audrey Nicholl for her question, and the Scottish Government is deeply concerned by any potential negative impact on news provision across Scotland, and in particular on locally relevant news for audiences in the north of Scotland. Local journalism is essential to the health of our democracy. It provides scrutiny of local institutions, it gives voice to underrepresented communities, and it ensures that important civic information reaches those who need it most. The Scottish Government remains committed to supporting a sustainable, a diverse and inclusive media landscape, and will be making those views clear through our ongoing engagement with Scottish Television and with Ofcom, including through the forthcoming consultation.
Audrey Nicholl.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response. The removal of STV North from the North East will silence the voice of the region at a critical time when issues such as energy are of national importance. STV North has been an important destination for a pipeline of top-quality North East journalists cutting their teeth on local stories. Indeed, the School of Journalism at Robert Gordon University has a strong collaboration with STV North through student placements and through a memorial bursary for Donald John MacDonald, that wonderful former STV News editor. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that STV is shamefully closing the door on the next generation of journalists, producers, engineers and creatives in the North East? And will he join me in calling on STV to immediately reverse their damaging proposal?
Thank you. Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, I agree with Audrey Nicholl that regional news is a crucial part of our media landscape, and I absolutely agree that the North East of Scotland is a huge part of that, both in terms of audiences and journalistic talent. That's why I met with Scottish Television last week to press the importance of protecting jobs for media professionals right across Scotland. I'll also be meeting with Ofcom and the National Union of Journalists in the coming weeks to discuss STV's proposals and to set out the Scottish Government's deep concerns. Throughout these ongoing engagements, I will continue to emphasise our strong opposition to proposals that put sustainable Scottish jobs and the outputs of vital news services at risk.
Question number 7, Douglas Lumsden.
To ask the Scottish Government whether the Culture Secretary has met with STV following recent reports of its plan to close its North of Scotland news programme.
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, I met with Scottish Television on the 6th of November, and the Scottish Government will continue to engage on this matter, including responding to Ofcom's forthcoming consultation. The Scottish Government expects all broadcasters to reflect the diversity of our nation and our local communities. I'll continue to champion a vibrant, inclusive and regionally representative media sector and a strong and sustainable Scottish broadcasting sector.
Dr Thompson.
Presiding Officer, the fact that 3 North East MSPs have all lodged questions on the potential axing of the North of Scotland news programme just shows how important we feel on a cross-party basis that this local news coverage is retained. So does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that if the Chief Executive, Rufus Radcliffe, can't make the North News work in light of STV North profits increasing, then he should step aside and let someone else manage the company instead?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, firstly, thank you very much to Douglas Lumsden for his question. And I'm sure he will appreciate, as somebody who represented a North of Scotland constituency and studied in Aberdeen, so enjoyed the joys of Grampian television before changes to STV. I understand there's a very, very particular dimension to these proposed changes in Aberdeen, in the North East and the North of Scotland more generally. That is why I wanted to raise these points directly with Rufus Radcliffe. I think he and Scottish Television will have heard the views from across this chamber here about the concerns that people have. Also about the repeated issue of advertising, which we've heard members talk about, that there's projected increases of advertising income. I was told by Scottish Television their concern is about reducing advertising income. There's a disparity here. I think it's for STV to clarify that so we can best understand this. I think everybody wants sustainable journalism and a sustainable Scottish television, but we're going to have to understand the decision-making that's been involved in it. I've made my position absolutely clear about supporting journalistic jobs in Aberdeen and right across Scotland.
Supplementary, Michael Mara.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can the Cabinet Secretary, does he agree with me that proper journalism has to be done locally? That has to be done in communities and with communities. It can't be a centralised function that happens in the Central Belt to people in Aberdeen and in Dundee. And what case is he making to the Chief Executive of STV about just that point where you see the opt-out in Dundee ending? That's a clear issue, a clear consequence of this, and a massive diminution in the situation in Aberdeen, where we have real challenges in our economy, real changes in our local community, and it needs that kind of representation of journalism done in the community.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I think Michael Marr has been making his point very well. I should have perhaps declared an interest as a former journalist and a long-standing member of the National Union of Journalists. I understand the point that he's making very well, and I think it is important that we see centres of journalism right across the country. Now, Scottish Television was keen to impress on me that they will continue to provide news from correspondents in Aberdeen, in Inverness and in Dundee. But I hear from him and from colleagues in other parts of the chamber that that does not reassure members enough. One of the outstanding questions for me, understanding a little bit about how this business works, is that because of new technology, it's actually easier to do certain things from different places. And I want to be assured that as part of any changes that STV is thinking about is not a diminution of news from Aberdeen, from Inverness, from Dundee and right across the rest of the country. And I think he makes a point very well that it's really important that we have centres for journalism right across the length and breadth of Scotland.
Supplementary, Beatrice Bishop.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Many in Shetland tune into STV North News because of its northern focus, as opposed to a more generic all-Scotland and often Central Belt outlook. Will the Scottish Government do all it can to impress on STV bosses that the islands of Scotland appreciate reliable local news, and any loss is a damaging blow to respected journalism, especially in an age of fake news?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I totally agree with Beatrice Wishart, and she's absolutely right. Communities, whether those are in Shetland, in Orkney, in the Western Isles, in the north of Scotland, where there are particular and regional reasons why news order might be different, news reports may have different content, are going to have to compete much more with content from the heavy population centres in central Scotland. And I have no doubt, having lived in the north of Scotland, that this will be causing concern to people. Now, it's for STV to give assurances about any proposed changes that there will not be a diminution of reporting from Shetland or anywhere else in the north of Scotland. These are the questions that I've asked. Answers have been provided, but I think much more will be required to satisfy me and members right across the chamber.
Question number 4, Bill Kidd.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what steps it is taking to support creative industries in Glasgow.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government strongly supports Glasgow's creative industries. Scottish Enterprise is leading on a range of strategic projects and tailored business support for the creative industries, managing 42 opportunities worth nearly £8 million in grants, with over 90% of those situated in the Glasgow region. To support these projects, Scottish Enterprise are working with Screen Scotland, are working with Creative Scotland, are working with Animation Scotland and other partnerships, including Glasgow City Council and local innovation districts. And Skills Development Scotland also provides apprenticeships and the free Skills for Growth programme to assist workforce planning.
Bill Kidd.
I thank the Scottish Government for everything it is doing to support the sector. The Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations estimates the total cost of the UK Government's rise in employer national insurance contributions to the voluntary sector in Scotland, which includes many cultural bodies, will be around £75 million. Organisers say they have nowhere left to cut and may have to freeze pay or cut jobs as a result. Can the Cabinet Secretary say what discussions they've had with regards to reimbursement, and do they support calls for the UK Chancellor to scrap this damaging policy in the upcoming UK budget?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I commend Bill Kidd for his question and say that we've always been very clear that the UK Treasury must fully fund the actual costs for Scotland's public sector, recognising the differing size and configuration of our public services to meet our specific needs. Within my own portfolio, the Scottish Government is committed to investing at least £100 million more annually in culture and the arts and communities by 2028-29. It's disappointing that the UK Government has chosen to erode the full benefit of this, and we're clear that the UK Government should have asked those with the broadest shoulders to contribute more, not try and balance their budget on the back of cultural organisations, charities and the health service.
Question number 5 has been withdrawn. Question number 8, Jamie Halker-Johnson.
To ask the Scottish Government what assessment is made of the potential economic implications of its paper A Fresh Start with Independence.
Cabinet Secretary.
I thank Jimmy Halker-Johnson for his question. The potential economic implications of the proposals within A Fresh Start with Independence are set out in the paper itself, as well as its 2 accompanying publications, firstly the macroeconomic framework of an independent Scotland and A Fresh Start with Independence, questions and answers.
Jamie Halker-Johnson.
Leading economist Professor Ronald MacDonald has described the SNP's economic plans as totally shambolic and that they would have a devastating effect, while the paper wrongly states that Scotland's GDP has grown faster than the UK's. Does the Cabinet Secretary still stand by this discredited paper, the bill for which the SNP has made Scottish taxpayers pick up, or will he admit that it simply doesn't add up?
Cabinet Secretary.
No, I don't. And I would commend the report to Jamie Halker-Johnson because, given his question, he clearly hasn't even read it. I mean, I know it's difficult reading for Scottish Conservatives because the statistics in it provided, amongst others, by the OECD, it's a very reputable international body, draws comparison between the United Kingdom and our neighbouring countries. And it shows that our neighbouring independent nations are wealthier than the United Kingdom. They are happier. They are fairer. That growth is higher. That there is lower overall poverty. These are on pages, just so Mr Halker-Johnson can read it, it's on pages 35, 36, 37. The figures from the OECD, I don't know if Mr Halker-Johnson knows what the OECD is.
I got 3 requests for supplementaries. I would like to take all 3, but I need succinct questions and responses. Supplementary, Neil Bibby.
Since 2021, the Scottish Government has spent an estimated £3.5 million of taxpayers' money on staffing and other costs associated with preparing and publishing pointless constitutional white papers. That's money that could have been spent elsewhere. We've already heard about the case of Cumbernauld Theatre, an iconic theatre which has been part of the local community for 60 years. They urgently need to raise £300,000. If it does not find the money, it could close. For less than a tenth of the cash wasted on these imaginary white papers, a concrete community asset that actually exists could be saved. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, why does this SNP government continue to waste taxpayers' money on white papers that have no impact when it should be using this money to invest in impactful community assets instead?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, can I remind Mr Bibby, I know it's difficult for him to accept having lost the last election, that the majority of MSPs elected to this Parliament were elected on a manifesto commitment that there should be an independence referendum and that the public should be informed about the updated position of the opportunities that independence provides. Now, I know Mr Bibby doesn't agree with that, but he lost the election and this party won it. So that's why we are doing what we said we were going to do. We are providing more funding for culture and the arts than his party even called for. I'm proud of that. This party voted for it, the Conservatives voted against it, and Neil Bibby bravely abstained.
Brief supplementary, Gordon MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What assessment has the Scottish Government made of the economic implications of not pushing for the people of Scotland to have the opportunity to decide their own future and to escape the mire of broken Brexit Britain?
Succinct response, Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I mean, Mr MacDonald asked a very important question. What is the consequence? What is the consequence of remaining in a suboptimal performing state, which is the United Kingdom? It does not perform as well as our neighbouring countries. These are facts. I know it's difficult for the people that oppose independence to accept the facts. So the cost of not becoming independent is we do not have the levers at our disposal to be able to match our neighbouring countries that are healthier, wealthier and fairer than the United Kingdom is. And incidentally, there is only one route back to the European Union, which is Scotland to have a referendum on becoming an independent member state of the European Union. The Conservatives oppose rejoining the European Union. The Labour Party opposes rejoining the European Union. This government, this Parliament, there's a majority for rejoining the EU, and the only way to do that is for this country to become independent.
And brief supplementary, Willie Rennie.
So the Greens say that the latest currency policy from the SNP would be catastrophic. The previous SNP conference said it was a dangerous experiment. Even the highly respected Robin McAlpine said, for God's sake, get us off this mad, mad bus. Why won't he get off the bus?
Cabinet Secretary.
I don't know how comfortable Willie Rennie is being applauded by the Conservatives. I would be a little bit concerned if I was Willie Rennie. Look, we have, surprise, surprise, there are different views on the constitutional future of Scotland. This party, the Scottish Green Party, are in favour of Scotland becoming an independent member state of the European Union. The Liberal Democrats are in favour of a federal United Kingdom. I think the Labour Party is in favour of protecting devolution. I have no idea what the Tories' position is at the present time. I would have hoped that all of us as Democrats can agree, though, on one thing, that the future of the country should be determined by the people. And that is why, given the change of circumstances post-Brexit, a majority in this Parliament wished there to be a referendum on Scotland becoming an independent country within the European Union. And I'm sorry that the Liberal Democrats are departing from what I thought was their traditional position, which was supporting Scottish Home Rule and Scottish self-government.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. That concludes portfolio questions on Constitution, External Affairs and Culture and Parliamentary Business. We will now move on to the next portfolio, and we'll move straight on to the next portfolio. In the interest of time management over the whole of the afternoon, I would advise members that there's a lot of interest, obviously, in this portfolio, and therefore I would like succinct questions and I would like succinct answers from Government Ministers to match. With that, I call question number 1, Maurice Golden.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it is reviewing the effectiveness of firework control zones.
Minister Siobhan Brown.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Local authorities now have the powers to introduce firework control zones to tackle the misuse of fireworks, and I'm pleased to say that they were in place in Glasgow for the first time this year and Edinburgh for the second. Can I also welcome the overall significant reduction in disorder across Scotland over the bonfire night period? Firework control zones played a role as part of the wide package of measures that were delivered by our partners, and I thank them all for their dedication and commitment shown to keeping our community safe. We will bring partners together to identify learning from this year, which will help inform our approach to Bonfire Night 2026.
Maurice Golden.
I thank the Minister for that answer, and I would associate myself with her comments, because last week saw a marked reduction in trouble on bonfire night compared with previous years, and there were no reports of injuries to emergency crews, outcomes that reflect the professionalism and dedication of our police officers. But the Chief Constable has warned that the force risks losing 1,000 of those officers without increased budget support. So, will the Minister join me in praising the emergency services while recognising the front line must be properly supported?
Minister.
Absolutely. As I said in my opening statement, that I totally thank all the emergency service and all the work that they do with Operation Moonbeam, that goes on for months before bonfire night. And of course, we will be engaging with Police Scotland about their budgetary requirements.
Supplementary, Claire Adamson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I also welcome the fact that there seems to have been less antisocial behaviour this year. With the first firework control zones in place, does the Minister hope that this will encourage other local authorities to use the powers that they have been given to consider the introduction of such bans, but it is clear that communities like mine in Motherwell and Wishaw are requesting them?
Minister.
Yes, absolutely I do. Firework control zones, as I said, have been in place now for 2 bonfire nights. The designation of a zone is a local decision based on local circumstances, and local authorities are responsible for their introduction and use. Through the Fireworks and Pyrotechnic Articles Scotland Act 2022, we've given local authorities additional powers to tackle the misuse of fireworks in response to local community needs. And along with the broader measures, firework control zones are an important tool that can be used to help keep communities safe and support cultural and behavioural change to address the misuse of fireworks. So yes, I would encourage all local authorities to consider introductions. I do believe there is a very strong appetite from the communities across Scotland. I know in Ayr there is a petition of over 1,600 signatures for the introduction of firework control zones. The Scottish Government will support local authorities wishing to implement firework control zones.
Brief supplementary, Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In my constituency, many constituents contacted me because of concerns about themselves and indeed their animals. Does the Minister agree that it would be much easier to control the use of fireworks if all aspects of their sale and use were fully devolved to Scotland?
Minister.
Thank you. Yes, I do agree. It would be better if we have all the legislation relating to fireworks and pyrotechnics devolved to Scotland so that we can fully respond to the needs and the concerns of Scottish communities. In that way, we would have full control of all aspects of sale and use of fireworks, including potentially limits to the noise of fireworks. As this is not the case at the moment, I will continue to press the UK Government on what more can be done on firework regulation, and I have sought further discussions on this issue.
Question number 2, Hamza Youssef.
To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking to safeguard the right to peacefully protest.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. The right to peaceful public assembly and freedom of expression are important rights the Scottish Government is committed to uphold. Peaceful public assembly allows us to protest, celebrate culture and hold memorials, and it is right that our communities should be able to participate in such activities. The right to protest is important in a democratic society, and existing legislation sufficiently protects these rights. However, protests should be peaceful and never used to justify any form of hateful, violent, intimidating or otherwise criminal behaviour, and we fully support Police Scotland to take appropriate and proportionate action in response to such behaviour.
Hamza Youssef.
Can I thank the Minister for her response? Minister, pensioners, priests, people from all walks of life, many of whom have never had a single conviction in their lives, have been arrested for peaceful protest here in Scotland. The Independent Commission on UK Counter-Terror Law Policy and Practice, which was published yesterday, makes it clear that UK terror laws have been used far too widely in the case of proscription of non-violent protest group Palestine Action. Given this latest independent report led by pre-eminent figures such as Sir Declan Morgan, Dominic Grieve, Baroness Saida Warsi and others, will the Minister urge the Home Secretary to immediately overturn this blatant attempt by the UK Government to silence non-violent protest in the face of a genocide, of course, in which the UK Government is complicit?
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I fully recognise that the prescription of Palestine action by the UK Government has been criticised by many groups and individuals across society, and that there have been many people across the UK that have chosen to show their opposition through protest. As the member is aware, though, this is an area and a decision reserved to the UK Government, and I recognise that this is now with the courts, and we will all want to see what the outcome of the judicial review is, which is due to take place this month in the High Court of London.
Supplementary, Sharon Dowie.
Thank you. Presiding Officer, retailers and members of the public are telling us that they can't get a response to 999 calls, even when they're threatened with violence. And when a women's rights group tried to peacefully protest, instead of removing the disruptor, we ended up with the ridiculous spectacle of Brawleygate. So can I ask the Minister, does she accept that under this government, police officers are being told to chase down so-called Brawley assaulters and record non-criminal hate incidents instead of focusing on keeping communities safe and upholding the right to peaceful protest?
Minister.
Yes, so thank you. I think one of the things is, as I've just said, and it is an operational issue for Police Scotland, the Scottish Government does protect the right for peaceful public assembly and freedom of expression are important rights that the Scottish Government is committed to uphold.
Supplementary, Katie Clark.
Has the Scottish Government had any discussions with the UK Government regarding the prescription of Palestine action? Have ministers received any security briefings or made any representations given the arrests at protests in Scotland?
Minister.
I personally have not had any discussions or correspondence from the UK Government. I think the Cabinet Secretary has, and she will be happy to write to the member in regards to that.
And brief supplementary, Douglas Ross.
We've had peaceful protests outside this Parliament from women's groups urging the Scottish Government to finally respect the Supreme Court judgment. Instead, we get the Scottish Government going to court, arguing that biological males should be sent to the female prison estate. So can I ask the Minister, in the 24 hours since we tried to get answers from Angela Constance yesterday, but she refused, have the Government sought any legal advice or advice from Scottish Government officials about what they can say in Parliament, or do they simply not care about updating this Parliament and answering the questions?
Minister, with reference to the issue of peaceful protest?
Yes, I don't know how that relates to peaceful protest, the Deputy Presiding Officer, and I'll leave it at that.
Point of order, Douglas Ross.
I understand in your ruling, Presiding Officer, you said in respect to peaceful protests, therefore you allowed the question. The Minister has point-blank refused to answer any part of the question. Is that in order? Because these are serious matters that have repeatedly been raised in this chamber, and Government Ministers are refusing to answer the very basic points that we need to see addressed in this chamber and are being asked out with it, but we get nothing from the Ministers.
I thank Douglas Ross for his contribution. What I would say is that I'm in charge of ensuring that the question time runs smoothly in terms of supplementaries as regards supplementary questions relating to the principal question on the business bulletin. That is the point I made to the Minister. I am not in charge of how the Minister chooses to respond, and that is a matter for the Minister, and obviously the member has many ways in which he can seek to pursue that aspect. Question number 3, I call Finlay Carson.
To ask the Scottish Government what assessment is made of the impact of any reductions in police officer numbers since 2020 on rural communities.
Cabinet Secretary Angela Constance.
Presiding Officer, responsibility for the police workforce rests with the Chief Constable, who has a range of local and national resources to draw on in preventing and tackling crime. The Scottish Government provided record funding of £1.64 billion in 25-26, an increase of £90 million to support capacity and capability, enabling Police Scotland to take on more recruits last financial year than at any time since 2013, with further intakes planned throughout 25-26. Whilst we do not want anyone to be a victim of crime, no matter where they live, I would also note that Scotland is a safer place since this government took office, with recorded crime down 39% since 2006.
Finlay Carson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response, and why let the facts get in the way of a well-spun story? Because the real facts tell a different story. Police Scotland has been defunded to the point where officer numbers in Dumfries and Galloway have fallen by 22% since 2020. Now the Government are starting to impose new occupancy charges on officers living in police-owned accommodation, a policy first consulted on over a year ago. And the Police Federation warns even more rural officers will leave. Does the Cabinet Secretary accept that this penalty is worsening an already dire situation, and will she urgently review the policy before rural policing is hollowed out even further?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the issue that the member raises is indeed an operational matter for Police Scotland, but in terms of police numbers over the entire country, the full-time equivalent as of 30th September was 16,441. As of 3rd of November, the numbers were 16,531. The numbers, I am getting to that if you do me the courtesy of allowing me to speak.
Mr Carson, the Cabinet Secretary is on her feet responding to your question. Please let's hear what she has to say.
And if I can say 16,531 officers as of the 3rd of November. It's for the Chief Constable to deploy those police officers across the regions. In terms of F Division, which is the division that covers Dumfries and Galloway, as of the 30th of September, 354 officers were deployed, and that is stable in comparison to the previous quarter.
Supplementary, Polly McNeill.
Community police officers play a key role in preventing crime, provide a visible presence in communities, tackling antisocial behaviour. They work with local people, particularly young people, to get ahead of problems with alcohol, drug abuse and other issues that drive criminality. But last week, the Criminal Justice Committee the Chief Constable told the Criminal Justice Committee that she wanted an increase of 600 community police officers as part of the budget process. What is the Scottish Government's position on this?
Cabinet Secretary.
So, Presiding Officer, I'm very much aware of the evidence that the Chief Constable gave to the Criminal Justice Committee. As members would expect, I have very regular dialogue with both the Chief Constable and also the Scottish Police Authority, and indeed myself and the Cabinet Secretary for Finance met with the Chief Constable and the SPA last night. So we are, of course, looking very seriously, as you'd expect, at the Police Scotland request for budget. What I would say is that obviously has to be decided in due process. Once we actually know what the UK budget is on the 26th of November, the Scottish Government will be in a position to bring forward our budget on the 13th of January. But the point she makes about community policing being central to prevention and good community relationships and overall community cohesion is well made.
And brief supplementary, Emma Harper.
Thank you. Can the Cabinet Secretary outline what engagement has been undertaken with police and with people and stakeholders to ensure that the voices of rural communities are heard in work to tackle rural crime?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the key route here is for the Scottish Partnership Against Rural Crime, which is chaired by Police Scotland. It brings together key justice and rural sector partners, including the NFU Scotland, the Scottish Crofton Federation, Crime Stoppers and Rural Watch Scotland. And the partnership provides a very robust multi-agency approach to preventing rural crime and to support actions taken at a local level, and also provides information and advice to rural and farming communities on local intelligence on how best to prevent crime in their area.
Question number 4, Neil Bibby.
To ask the Scottish Government when it last met with Police Scotland and what issues were discussed.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, Ministers and Scottish Government officials regularly meet representatives of Police Scotland. My most recent engagement was yesterday when the Cabinet Secretary for Finance and I met with the Chief Constable to discuss the policing budget. I meet with the Chief Constable on a regular basis where we cover a range of topics such as Police Scotland's 3-year plan, stop and search, mental health and police pay negotiations.
Neil Bibby.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. Since Police Scotland was established in 2013, there are around 1,000 fewer police officers across Scotland, and 140 police stations have closed, including Fergusley Park, in one of the most deprived communities in Scotland. And the future of stations like Paisley's Mill Street are still uncertain. Cuts have consequences, and the Scottish Police Federation say that officers are being run ragged. Sexual crime is up by 45% and violent crime is up by 7%. in the last decade. And horrifically, just last week, a 13-year-old boy was stabbed in Paisley town centre. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary how she can seriously tell the public that our streets are safe under this SNP government when police officer numbers are down, police stations are closing and violent crime is up?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, over the course of this government, violent crime has actually reduced. He does make a good point about the increase in reported domestic violence. There is no doubt about it that our police officers do a demanding job day in, day out. That's one of the reasons why I have ensured that our police officers are amongst the best remunerated across these aisles. I have not cut the budget, and in fact, every year since I've been Cabinet Secretary for Justice, I have actually increased the budget for policing, and police numbers are stabilised at 16,500. There is work to be done in and around police stations. It is important that the estate is modernised and indeed fit for purpose. I have seen that in my own constituency with the closure of the Livingston Police Station, where instead we now have the Civic Centre, where all partners are brought together.
Supplementary, Liam Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Cuts to police budgets and nearly 1,000 fewer officers since the pandemic have led to shop theft rocketing by 124%. Worse, the Scottish Retail Consortium says those figures mask a hidden epidemic of unrecorded theft. Retailers warn shoplifting is effectively decriminalised. So will the Cabinet Secretary combat this by giving the police what they say they need in the budget, by extending the funding for the Retail Crime Task Force beyond March 26, or both?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, this Government and indeed these Justice Ministers were very pleased to secure that very specific funding of £3 million to tackle retail crime. I'm happy to write to the member to tell him some of the benefits that resource has had. It is important to recognise the scourge of shoplifting, particularly where it connects to serious organised crime. He may be aware that I chair the Serious Organised Crime Task Force and will be doing so again tomorrow. And in terms of the budget, we have a due process to go through. And I very much hope that on this occasion the opposition parties, as part of their negotiations, actually advocate for budget for police, because actually last year the only person who advocated for an increase in budget was the Cabinet Secretary for Justice.
And supplementary, Lee MacArthur.
Thank you. Following Police Scotland Chief Constable's comments about the rise in online harm children are facing and the First Minister's commitment to do everything within his power to tackle this, will the Cabinet Secretary support a new cross-sector coalition, including Children First, to urgently establish what more can be done within the powers of the Scottish Government?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, we would certainly be very interested in that, and work on that has already begun, in part through my engagement with the Serious Organised Crime Task Force, where we, amongst other things, discuss the changing threat and the growing threat of online harm. Other colleagues in other parts of this government, whether it's our education and child protection colleagues, are acutely aware, and the work that they lead is also very focused on online harms. But I very much accept the point of principle that he makes, and that it is beholden on all of us to do more against this increasing threat.
Question number 5, David Russell.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. It's to ask the Scottish Government what it's doing to improve working conditions for employees of the Scottish Prison Service.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, our prisons operate in a unique and complex environment. The Scottish Government and the Scottish Prison Service remain resolute in our joint commitment to ensure they remain a safe place to live and work. SPS continue to recruit at pace and invest in technology such as body-worn video cameras to place the service in the best possible position to face current challenges. The demands placed on our prison officers and the rise in prison population have been well documented, and I thank them for the hard work that they do each and every day. In recognition of their difficult and unique roles within our justice system, the Scottish Government delivered an 8% pay rise for prison officers, with the 2-year pay deal secured earlier this year.
David Russell.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. The recent Crisis Point Reach report from the Prison Officers Association Scotland highlighted a number of concerns that current SPS officers have, including failures in the recruitment system, a lack of long-term planning, making working conditions sometimes difficult and dangerous, a toxic working environment stemming from poor management. And actually, I have a constituent who's been suspended for 6 months in full pay, and the shifts have been covered in overtime, which seems for a relatively minor issue, which is a gross waste of taxpayers' money. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with the findings of the report, and what immediate action is she taking to address the systemic issues that it outlines?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I very much welcome the Prison Officers Association report, which demonstrates the pressures and challenges facing prison staff at a time of high population, and I appreciate their hard work. It is crucial that we listen to the voice of prison officers. Prison officers, I know, want to do the job that they are trained to do, and it is on all of us to create the right conditions for this to happen. And if I can assure the member that I have already discussed this important report with the Chief Executive of the Scottish Prison Service, and she's outlined to me a number of actions that they are already engaged in. But if the member wishes to correspond with me, I would be happy to provide him with further detail.
Question number 6, Megan Gallagher, who is joining us remotely.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government, in light of the recent convictions of a grooming gang for sexual exploitation in Dundee, what steps it is taken to prevent similar cases across Scotland, including through the establishment of a national inquiry into grooming gangs?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government will continue to consider the need for an inquiry into grooming gangs in Scotland should further evidence emerge. The case in Dundee, whilst horrendous, is of a different nature to the cases reported in Baroness Casey's national audit. The National Child Sexual Abuse and Exploitation Strategic Group has agreed a prevention-focused approach to collectively improve how harm is identified, reported and responded to in Scotland by statutory agencies and other partners. We also support third sector organisations involved in preventing child sexual abuse, including Barnardo Scotland, NSPCC Childline and the Lucy Faithfull Foundation Scotland, who deliver preventative and risk reduction interventions to children in Scotland.
Megan Gallagher.
Scottish victims of grooming gangs are demanding an inquiry. The Cabinet Secretary for Justice said that the Scottish Government would have an inquiry if it was assessed as necessary. Given the sentencing in Dundee last week and the harrowing stories emerging from Glasgow this week, what standards or criteria would have to be met before an inquiry is assessed as necessary?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, of course, Presiding Officer, it is for Ms Gallagher and others to be presenting a case that is based on the added value that an inquiry would bring to preventing abuse in our children right now. If that evidence emerges, we will, of course, listen to it fairly and without favour. As Ms Gallagher knows, there is work ongoing right now that is led by the National Child Sexual Abuse Exploitation Strategic Group, and also, crucially, in terms of the justice portfolio, Police Scotland is actively reviewing investigations right now, current and historical, and we have also been clear that Police Scotland are very closely involved with the National Strategic Group. There is, of course, the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry. I very much know the reasons that that inquiry was set up, but it is important to stress that that extensive review undertaken by the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry also includes child protection policy and practice.
Question number 7, Keith Brown.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on any progress made to address concerns raised by local residents about levels of noise from HMP Cornton Vale.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, whilst continuing to support many vulnerable women, SPS have taken a number of actions to reduce the noise experienced by their neighbours at HMP and YOI Stirling. Most recently, SPS held a meeting with local residents on the 23rd of September, where they presented a concept for a window surround to reduce the noise from those rooms closest to local housing. The prototype window surround was installed on the 16th of October and entered a period of testing until the 24th of October. Initial feedback on the trial was very positive, and planning is now underway to install surrounds to the remaining windows. Engagement between SPS and Stirling Council has started, and pending a final planning approval, it is anticipated that all work will be completed by the 31st of March 2026, and SPS will continue to keep residents updated via their website, especially during any period of planned work.
Keith Brown.
I very much hope that the developments which the Cabinet Secretary has outlined will prove to be effective, but she will know that residents have been raising serious concerns about noise and disruption from HMP Cortonvale for far too long, with very limited progress to date. And given the ongoing impact this continues to have on the well-being and quality of life of those living nearby, and the length of time it is taking to find effective solutions, does she agree that the Scottish Prison Service need to continue to treat this as a matter of urgency and deliver a lasting resolution?
Briefly, Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, Presiding Officer, I very much do. This has went on far too long, actually, for all concerned, and I want to ensure the member that SPS have given me their commitment that they are moving at pace, and I will continue to engage with Mr Brown and SPS on this matter, and I'm very grateful to his constituents for their engagement and their patience.
And I can squeeze in question 8, but I need succinct questions from the member and from the Minister in response. Question 8, Emma Roddick.
To ask the Scottish Government how it is supporting and improving the experience of victims of domestic abuse, particularly in situations where there are young children in the family.
Minister.
Thank you. We are committed to protecting survivors of domestic abuse through legislation and funding support services. Research on the groundbreaking domestic abuse legislation, which treats offences more seriously when involving children, found it does better reflect victims' experiences. Our £20 million BENS HOOS programme improves support for children affected by abuse, providing trauma-informed spaces and coordinated services with incremental rollout from 2027.
Emma Roddick.
I supported a constituent in a truly horrific situation where her daughter came forward to claim that her father abused her. My constituent was mandated to allow contact between the two despite the child's protests and symptoms of trauma. In situations like this, it can feel for a victim like they can't win. Every decision is scrutinised and they cannot protect their child. My constituent's daughter clearly inherited her bravery, and it must have been so difficult to share what happened to her at such a young age. That has to result in protection. Following the provisions in the Children's Scotland Act 2020 to better incorporate the child's views, what concrete steps is the Government taking to ensure that a child's expressed fear of a parent or desire not to have contact is given due weight and consideration in abuse cases rather than being dismissed as coaching or alienation?
Minister, briefly.
Thank you. Firstly, I'm really sorry to hear about your constituent's situation. The child's welfare must be the court's paramount consideration in contact cases, and the court is required to consider the child's view subject to their age and their maturity. We plan to commence further provisions in the 2020 Act to enhance how the views of children are heard in these cases. We have also set up a working group on child welfare reporters who can be appointed by the court to get the child's views.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes portfolio questions on Justice and Home Affairs. There will be a short pause before we move on to the next item of business.